Alright, it's time for another project and another video, and it's going to be really finishing some of my decks. And I've got quite a few decks that need it. I'm starting out right here. So this is the small deck behind my garage, and it normally has 2 chairs and that small table. So let's get into this. The wood that this deck is made out of is in good shape. It really just needs to be cleaned, stained, and sealed. You can see the dark discoloration of the wood and the yellowish mold that's growing on top of the deck. And here you can see how the last coat of stain sealant has worn away over time. And I think there also might be some scratches from the dog's paws as they run across the deck. So the next thing I'm going to do is clean the deck, and I'm going to use my pressure washer. This is the second one I've owned, and I bought this one back in July of 2019. So before I had the pressure washers, I would take a plastic scrub brush and a bucket with some bleach and soap in it, and I would scrub the decks. And that was an effective way of doing it, but it wasn't very time effective. It was a lot of work and a lot of time. Okay, for the specs on the Craftsman pressure washer, it's rated at 3000 psi at 2.5 gallons per minute, and I usually use the 40-degree angled tip. You don't want to hold the pressure washer too close to the wood because you can actually tear up the wood with it. So my strategy is to use that 40-degree tip and hold the wand away from the wood until it covers just about one board. And that seems like it doesn't tear up the wood or damage it. And then I will just do 1 or 2 boards at a time and go left to right. Well, let's get some music going and I will get this deck pressure washed. Looks like I ran out of gas. Well, there you have it. What took me about 25 minutes to do only took you about 60 seconds to watch. Well, there we have it. A really good start. But that's going to have to dry. So we pressure washed the deck. We let it dry for a couple of days. Now it's time to do the sanding. And I've got a 6-inch DeWalt sander that I use for the job. All right. Sanding paper. We've got 60 all the way up to 240, but I usually use 120. And I think this whole stack is 120. We're probably going to use the whole stack before it's all said and done. Just attached with Velcro. Easy enough. What do we got on there? We got 80 on there. All you have to do is line up the holes. And it's on. Okay, I guess it's time for us to have the talk and for me to give my opinion. I don't really think there's any shortcuts. I know there's tricks to the trade and somebody has experience and skills, but that doesn't equal a shortcut. So I sand my decks. I sand them every time I stain them. So it cleans up the wood by removing the top layer and opening up the pores and getting rid of all the old stain sealant. And then when I put the new stuff on, it will really soak in and protect the wood. This deck is over 20 years old and it's going strong. And I firmly believe that is because I spend the time when I do this to sand it. It's not a shortcut. It's just what I've learned and it's what I do. So let me get off my soapbox and get back down to earth. I've got most of this deck done. You can see there's a difference in color between the boards that are sanded and the boards that I still have to sand. I also unscrewed the walkway lights that I had attached to the deck. Sorry if the image is fuzzy. The camera is on the deck and I think the sander is vibrating it. This section is done. It's time to work on the landing. So if you're wondering how I determine how much to sand a board, I just try to make them all look the same. So that way when the stain goes on top, all the boards will be uniform. That's really important when you find a board that's rotted and you replace it with a new board, because the new board doesn't have the same weathering or age to it. It's hard to make that blend in with all the other boards that have been there a long time. I will sand everything I can with the orbital sander because it goes so much faster than hand sanding. Alright, the sanding is done and now you can see how uniform all the boards are. All the mold and mildew has been removed, any scuff marks and any old stain is gone. However, it's still not time to put the stain sealant on the deck. There's one more step we have to go through, and that is to remove any debris that might be between any of the deck boards. Almost all of it comes from the trees losing their leaves. Normally I will try to remove this debris twice a year. Once in the fall after the water oaks lose their leaves, and once in the spring after the live oaks lose their leaves. I'll do it this year as I'm refinishing the deck. And you can see in the video, I've got an old butter knife that I use, and I'm just flicking any of the leaves or acorns or whatever might be there up and out of the way. Sometimes there's a decent gap between the boards where there's debris. Other times the boards are almost touching each other. In this case, there's algae or mildew that's growing between the boards. I have to use a different method to get rid of that algae or mildew in between the boards, and I do that with a wire wheel. So I have a 4-inch wire wheel that I can attach to a battery-operated drill, and I will use that to clean all the algae in between the boards. So I put the drill on its side and make sure the wire wheel is in between the deck boards and pull the trigger. It's a little trickier when the boards are close together. You really have to hold on to the drill. There really wasn't much of a gap between these boards, but that just meant I had to be a lot more aggressive in trying to get the debris out. Just a little bit more and we'll be done with this step. Well, I tried to take my time blowing the deck off. I wanted to get all the sanding dust out of the pores of the wood and all the debris off. I am finally to the point where I'm getting the stain sealer onto the deck. I'm going to use a brush and it's going to take me a while, but it's going to turn out great. Well, there you have it, an hour's worth of painting in a minute and a half. So we still have to clean up the paintbrush and put things away, and then we'll get on to putting the deck lights back on the end. Alright, it's been a day and the deck has had plenty of time to dry. And I'm just going to put these walkway lights back on the same way they came off. There's already some screw holes for the clamps, and I'm just going to find those and screw the lights back onto the corner of the deck. We'll do the same thing on the other side and get the last light attached. Okay, it's been about a week and you can see how good this deck looks. And it has gotten rained on and there's some pollen on it. And as we zoom in on it, you can really see how good of a coverage we got on this. So one thing I really like about using a paintbrush to put on the colored sealant is that you can really fill in the cracks of the wood with that sealant. And this is just a little reminder of the last deck we refinished.
All right, it's time to wrap up another video. 2 decks down, 2 to go. I think it turned out pretty good myself. Well, like always, like, subscribe, check out those playlists, and I'll see you in that next video.